welcome to the SME TV channel. I'm your host, Angela Vithulkis, and this is the News and Views show. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel to support us and all SMEs, and of course, share, like, and comment. In today's episode, we take a look at land, or rather, specifically real estate. It's big business in Australia, or is it? Residential real estate in Australia accounts for more than half of household wealth. But houses in our capital cities are fast becoming unaffordable. Sadly, that's no longer the only challenge. COVID-19 can take credit for disrupting the business of real estate and disrupting sales and purchases. Joining me today to discuss all things real estate, the future of the market and the question mark over property values is Tom Panos, Australia's #1 real estate coach and trainer and Sydney's leading auctioneer. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
And Andrew Morello, real estate entrepreneur, winner of the first Apprentice and head of business development at the Entourage. Welcome back, Andrew.
Thanks, Angela. Great to be here.
Now, just before we get very serious about the topic, I'm going to quickly comment on both of your backgrounds.
Yes.
Mr. Morello,
Yes.
where are you?
I'm in my childhood home where my parents bought in Moonee Ponds in 1971. And it's, for those who follow my some of my interviews, it's where I've invested a lot of my personal real estate collection. My family's been in this area since 1956, so I'm not in my Vaucluse house. I haven't been there for the last month. I've actually been taking care of my mum and dad.
You're slumming it in Moonee Ponds.
You know what? But I've re-fallen in love with the romance of it, Angela. I can tell you that I've re-fallen in love with the romance of Moonee Ponds.
And you clearly think that Moonee Ponds is a monopoly board. And that's
Correct.
how you're amassing your real estate wealth. Is that right?
Correct. I just as they come up, they don't even put them up for auction anymore. Now they just come to me and I just buy them direct. That's the
Mr.
best way to go.
Panos,
Yes.
are you fishing for tonight's dinner?
Actually, that's an idea.
It is an idea, Tom. Good
That
way
is
to
an
save money.
idea. And so that is an idea. I didn't think about it, but
I'm thinking that since the business has been disrupted and you've got to go and find your food and they're not giving out food vouchers, you might be having to fend for yourself.
Correct. And I'll go, I'll do that. I'll get some free fish here and then I'll walk into Coles and pick up some grapes and not pay for them. They won't say anything. And that's my free meal for tonight.
Well, if you take a child with you, your child can eat for free walking around Coles as well.
That's a clever idea. That's actually saved me $30 today.
There you go.
There we go.
Now to get serious. Tom, I'm going to start with you. As an auctioneer, you've got your finger on the pulse of the real estate market. Are you pronouncing it DOA?
Look, it's too early to tell because there haven't been a lot of transactions. And we were just talking off camera with Andrew, and real estate agents across Australia are actually saying if they had more stock, they'd sell them. So at the moment, what you're actually seeing is probably a not good sample of what the impact is because Angela, a lot of vendors have chosen not to come onto the market. They've withdrawn their property for auction. They simply don't want to have a lot of strangers going in. Some people have got that as a health risk. Other people just feel like, hey, let the dust settle. So there hasn't been that many sales, but the ones that have sold have been okay. I think it's too early to tell, but over the next 1 or 2 months, we're going to get a clearer picture. One thing is for sure, there doesn't seem to be any distress selling, and that's because the government's action and also the fact that the banks have frozen payments for 6 months means you're not seeing anyone.
Supposedly the banks are coming to the party. It still hasn't been a clear indication of their good behaviour. You're holding off, Tom, from saying, you know, you want to see 1 or 2 months worth of results. That is still a quick time frame to see a result.
So Angela, what we can see, we can't see that in values yet, but the metrics that we can see, and I'll go through a couple. The first one is sentiment, and we're using Westpac research there. Sentiment has just plummeted, and it plummeted very quickly. It's plummeted faster than any other period we've seen. So the records could go back to 50 years, and this has been the sharpest fall. Then you have a look at things like turnover numbers. The number of transactions that have occurred in April have been significantly lower than any other year-on-year period. And then the third metric that CoreLogic RP data uses is called CMAs. And that is when someone is thinking of selling, they call an agent over to give them an appraisal on their property. And these can be tracked by CoreLogic RP data. And Angela, those things have plummeted as well. So there's these leading indicators, and then when you add valuations, and valuations are carried out by banks for mortgages, they've also plummeted. So that says to me
that's going to be the big fallout, Tom. I mean, Andrew, you know yourself, if valuations fall by even 10% later on, that's going to impact not only borrowing, but banks reserve the rights to nobble you at the knees for their LVRs on your loans.
Yeah, so you're going to see. It's interesting. I've actually just been engaged for by a private consulting firm in Melbourne to be a part of a commission that Westpac are putting together on a new way of valuing property. So, a fair and reasonable way. So it's good to see. And I'm, not giving credits. And I'm a borrower from all of the majors, plus a few of the second tier guys as well. When you're sort of as leveraged as I get. So, but I was very impressed when Westpac reached out to this consulting firm. They've obviously engaged me through a third party, but they're looking at, okay, what is going to be the solution? What you're going to see is that you're going to see the risk assessment on individual borrowers or household borrowers be recarved up. I think you're going to see ASIC and APRA have to step in to regulate those changes. And I will say, and I'll agree with Tom there, that the banks have come to party, which is probably what's kept the market afloat. Obviously, my family's in the property business down in Melbourne with Jolis Craig, and obviously they have seen, as we said before, some great successes still not much coming off from a value point of view. So there has definitely been, especially in the housing market.
But Andrew, the valuations are only determined when the reality becomes reality, when you either buy or sell, because then the market, the value is set.
Correct.
So Tom, you've gone from being very busy on a Saturday doing auctions.
Yeah.
To no
sitting
more?
by the water now.
Well,
yeah, sitting by the water. Like, Angela.
Are you sending your resume out? What's going on?
Nah, I'm going to hang tight, not looking for anything. So listen, believe it or not, I mean, I'm flat chat because I've had I've normally, I've got 4 or 5 things going on at the one time. So my online business is my main thing, right? A subscription-based business that's
lucky for you, you were prepared for COVID-19.
Well, wasn't prepared. That was luck. And it's worked out being good. But so what's happened is I did one online auction. I didn't like it, and I don't do stuff I don't like. And I just said to the guys, I said, I got 30, 40 auctions booked in, hand them out to other auctioneers. I'm not interested in doing them. And subsequently, what's happened, it hasn't been a big success story, to be honest with you, because most of the auction onlines have actually been withdrawn prior.
Yeah.
And it appears that whole concept is in its early stages. I think it's going to have a role. I think post down the track, Angela, I mean, some people can't be at an auction on a Saturday. They're running a business, or they're got sports activities with kids and they can't afford to go to every auction thinking that they're going to miss out, or whatever the reason. And I think it's going to play a place. But Saturdays
streaming an auction is quite prevalent in the commercial world. You often turn up to commercial rooms when auctions are on, and someone's streaming, if not the auctioneer's company, then an agent hoping to represent someone else. So that's the norm already. Previously COVID, that's probably going to translate into the residential market now, where it will become quite normal to also stream these auctions. I think for as you said, Tom, for people to be able to see what's actually going in the market, it's a great idea. It's good for the buyers. Don't know about the sellers so much because it's a nerve-wracking thing, but you're right. How are you going to be? You're a talented auctioneer that ramps up the audience and gets everyone's emotions going. It's hard to translate virtual.
Listen, I've been streaming. I'm the biggest streamer of auctions in Australasia. I've been streaming auctions 3 or 4 every Saturday, and I live stream them. But an online auction and a streaming of an auction is two different things, right? Like, one is basically someone with a camera that's either on a mobile or going into technology that streams it. But Angela, an online auction is basically saying people are bidding online, right? And that people aren't at the property, and people aren't physically watching another person a metre away from them bid, and they don't have an auctioneer that's actually taking the pressure off, making people laugh, then moving the momentum up. You can't achieve that with an online auction from what I've seen, right? So that's where we're at.
Andrew, we know that the market's been disrupted, and exactly how that's going to pan out, time will tell. But the business of real estate, the real estate agents individually, who are basically all SMEs themselves, they have been hit very hard as well. They've almost come to a standstill. What are you hearing on the ground there with, it's easy to say pivot, but pivot to what?
Yeah, look, I'm going to agree with Tom's sentiment there, and we were talking just, prior to the interview, which we probably should have started recording earlier, that, my big opinion of this, I was in real estate full-time as a $1 million plus agent in the west of Melbourne during the GFC, right? And certainly this is different to the GFC, but it really separated the boys from the men and the women from the girls, and really, carved out who had what it takes. I think what you're going to see is, obviously, we're seeing technology playing a big part of it, but people are actually going to have to work harder. You're going to have to work harder for their vendors. They're going to have to work harder for their sellers. The good news is, to give you a prime example of a listing which was a deceased estate, which is a family friend of mine in Glen Iris down in Melbourne. In the last week, it's only been on the market for a week. They've had 23 private inspections and they've got 6 interested parties. So the positive is, if someone's getting in their car and they're actually going to see a property right now, what that actually means is that they are obviously a buyer that is definitely going to be buying. They're a
because they're
buyer.
going out of their way to do that. So they're not
correct.
They're not tire kicking. They're not.
Yeah, 100%. So the good news about that is that it's, if you're out there and you're being proactive and utilizing technology, then you actually have an opportunity to leverage off that and make the most of it. Yeah.
So Tom, if we've got people going out for private inspections, and they're showing engagement, is that also, on the one hand, a little bit of a disadvantage for the seller, because they're seeing, or they're not even going to be there to see how these people are reacting to the viewing, most likely. And, the agent's not reporting back, or we had, 20 people come through the inspection today in the open house. Is that going to mean that the sellers are going to have to adjust their expectations at the moment with a correction in the market, which, we've discussed this previously. I mean, you've discussed this with my brother, you've discussed it officially. The housing market was going to that excessive level in Sydney. Is this going to be the correction that we need?
So that's assumed that there is going to be a correction, and one would say, Angela, most likely it should point that there should be a negative impact in prices, but it's not 100%. And surprisingly, it's held up. The prices have held up better than I thought. But let me go back.
Too. We all thought that the prices would show a bigger hit, but so far we haven't actually seen that.
Yeah. So examples. My ex-business partner, sold a property in Newtown for 1,350. He said to me, he probably prior to COVID would have got around 1,450. So it's about $100,000 drop, whatever that is, 5-7%. Right, which sounds roughly about right. But you've got to also understand that, May 19, prices and the market was pretty lethargic. And then what actually happened is that we had a federal election, we had negative gearing sort of became clear, it's staying. Banks became a little bit easier with lending up money. And we saw a surge in Sydney and Melbourne, and that surge is up to 20%. So in many regards, what we're seeing is a bit of a clawback of some of those profits over that last 9-10 months post the federal election. Now, on another issue, which is what may actually happen to real estate pricing, it appears that Sydney, Melbourne are far more sensitive because of their gains. It appears that Adelaide and Brisbane haven't been impacted as much. Maybe it's got to do with the fact that the infection rates and the whole coronavirus didn't have that impact. But I actually think, to answer that question about not having buyers come through and open for inspection, is that impacting? Look, a little bit on what Andrew's saying. Real estate agents are telling me we've moved from a quantitative market to a qualitative market. At an open home, you had a lot of people, right? Quantity. You had people. There were neighbours. There were people that were beginning to look, and they weren't going to buy a house for another year. All of a sudden, what Andrew's saying is right, that you're getting a buyer that is going through the process, going to a home at 2 o'clock, walking into a house, knowing that there's COVID-19 happening. These people have actually gone through a few hoops to get to that point, and the agents are saying the conversion rate of a buyer appointment has skyrocketed. That means that you've got a high probability of actually getting a sale if a buyer comes to a property. They've probably done a bit of a video inspection of the property on realestate.com or domain. They've probably driven around the street. They know the home. All they're doing is doing the physical manifestation of looking at it. And there's a high prob that you're going to get an offer off these people. My concern with pricing is going to be when you have a bunch of vendors who are currently holding back, saying, let's wait till open for inspections are allowed. We held off our plans, and then they hit the market. You just get a stack of property come onto the market at the one time. You've got, you got negative press going on. The hangover's here now. Unemployment has gone to 9.5%. And you've got all that. That to me may have an impact on real estate prices.
So, Andrew, in your work with the Entourage, you're dealing with business owners and directly trying to build them up and increase their businesses. Are we going to see now in the real estate industry itself, lots of business owners who, is Mother Nature via COVID-19 going to cleanse those who probably shouldn't be in business anymore?
I reckon there's three categories in my experience. You know, I'm working with a number of different property style. I'm going to take property style businesses in general here, Angela, because I work with property developers. I work with property marketeers, and I also work with traditional real estate agents like Tom does as well. And the reality is that I'm going to say that they're categorized into three sections. There's the first category that have either been in the case of, let's say, like a Tom or a Entourage, where we were doing a lot online already. So we were able to pivot very quickly, and we've either maintained or been able to have some gradual continual growth in the market. Then there's the ones in the middle that are probably copying something around a 10, 15, 20, up to 30% loss from their traditional numbers that they've seen year on year.
Which is impactful. That's impactful.
It's impactful, but it means they can still survive. You know, obviously they can still survive. So what I'm actually seeing with a lot of real estate businesses that I've either advised for or worked with is that they repurpose staff to turn them into what we call EBUs, effective business units. So traditionally, you might have an individual agent who's listing, managing, and selling a property. Now what they're doing is they're going, okay, Tom's really good at listing, Murillo's really good at managing vendors, Angela's really good at buyer appointments. So why don't we put them into a team and turn them into an effective business unit, so that way they can work together to get the max out of their opportunity. So we're seeing some in that department. I'd say it's about a third, and then a third are just, I'm not going to lie to you, they're stuffed. They're not willing to embrace change. They're not willing to embrace Zoom. They're not willing to embrace the uncertainty of it all and practice that present moment awareness. And if you're not prepared to do that, then you will fall in this market. It is a do or die market, and if you're not prepared to make change, then you'll be left behind.
But that's true of most industries now. Tom, you're coaching agents online. You've been doing that for a while. Have you made any changes to the whole way that you're approaching this now? Are you sort of asking agents out there, this is the time now to up your skills, to reassess? Are you doing anything different now in advising or mentoring?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest change to me was, so I had two models in coaching. One of them was speaking, which I would do about 210 events a year to mortgage brokers and real estate agents. And the other one was the online, which has got, thousands of monthly subscribers. And that's been going for about 5-6 years. So what's happened is the speaking stopped, because you're not allowed, it's illegal to actually be in conference rooms, of course. So what's actually happened is that's been replaced by doing virtual webinars. The yield of those is only a fraction of what speaking gigs were. Like speaking gigs were 7,700. That's what I'd net, right? And now the online version of that is a third. But surprisingly, it actually, for me, like realistically, if I was doing so today I've done 2 and I've got 1 at 4 o'clock. So I do 3 every day. I do 3 virtual webinars, which equals 1 live, what would normally. But there's no way I'd be able to be sitting out here because to go off and do a live event, they're not all in Sydney, right? And most aren't in Sydney. Most are in
you can lose a day
by travel.
Oh, it's a day because it's Uber, airport, venue, back, right? And then anyway, so to cut a long story short, so what I'm doing is a lot of virtual stuff. So then you talk about the content. So what's the content? Like pivot's an interesting word because I think if you say, you pivot now, you actually have pivoted too late, right? Because I think there's a backlog between after you start something, the benefits of that thing don't happen that day, right? It takes time, right? So following up on what Andrew's saying, what am I advising clients right now? Well, there's a group of clients, and I don't know whether it's a third or whether it's more, where it's less. These are virgin type businesses. They were hanging in. They weren't making a buck anyway, right? All that COVID-19 has done is magnified and created and exposed a balance sheet and a P&L report that was sick. It was very sick, right? Then you've got another group of businesses, and for them, they're sort of saying, hang on a second, this is an opportunity. Because the way I see it at the moment, Angela, it's a case of it doesn't matter where you came from. You might have flown on a plane flying business. Some people might have been in first class. Some people might have been in economy. You're all on a plane, but in different status. The plane has landed, you're on the tarmac, and a bus has come to pick everyone up to take them to the terminal, which is what happens in Dubai, and everyone is in the bus. First class, business class, economy. And what the bus driver says is, I don't care where you came from. I don't care what ticket you bought. I don't care what size business you had. I don't care who you were. You're all the same. So there's this reset button. So there's a group of businesses that are saying, hang on a second, we can claw market share here if we move fast. And I think that's what the opportunity is. So I'm advising real estate agents, hey, go pro, become a deal maker, not an order taker. Get used to having owners that are going to want a lot more than their properties are probably worth. If you get good at that equation and help people sell and help people understand that if you're buying and selling in the same market, it's really irrelevant because, if your house was worth $1 million and now it's worth 900, you lose 100 grand. But if the one you're buying was worth 1.5 and you're picking it up at 1,350,000, you're in fact 50 grand better off upgrading in this market.
It's the same. Andrew, we've established that Tom doesn't normally get out of bed for anything less than 7 or 8 grand.
7 including GST.
Personally, I thought he'd have more like supermodel rates, but I guess at some point you compromise with the grey hair.
Correct.
And we are approaching running out of time. So just quickly, Andrew, your last thoughts here on, are you taking the optimistic view, because you're normally quite an optimistic guy. Are you taking the optimistic view that there is going to be light at the end of the tunnel? Yes, there might be some corrections, but you're quite invigorated in how you are going to be able to help that next crop of business owners or entrepreneurs who really want to make a difference. Right now, the real estate market is going to affect a lot of things. Good or bad, it is going to impact debt. It's going to impact service. It's going to impact market values, banks, mortgage brokers. Tom, you've brought them up. Last thoughts there on how you're viewing the latest disruption to COVID that we can address to COVID with the real estate market.
So I'm going to make 2 bold statements.
Bold ones, okay. I'm going to write that down then.
That'll be a good way to finish them off. Number 1 is this too shall pass. Our generation hasn't seen a Great War or a Great Depression. This is our Great War or Great Depression. Like, that's the reality.
Yeah, this generation.
This shall pass. Like, we got through World War I, which was actually called the Great War to end all wars. There wasn't supposed to ever be another World War. Then World War II came about. They got through that. My parents, I'm looking at the photos up on the wall on the left-hand side when they came on the boats in 1956 from Italy to Port Melbourne Pier, and they made Australia their home, and they've then gone on to succeed financially.
And what's your other big, bold statement?
And the other big bold statement is more is lost with indecision than wrong decision.
Yep.
So you know what? If you're thinking about doing something, as Tom said, this is the time to take action. Be strong, be bold, get out there, make a decision, have a crack, because if you don't, you're going to be left behind.
Yeah, well, those are big, bold statements that we'll make sure we let everybody know as well. It's worth sharing those very sage words of wisdom direct from Moonee Pond and the Velvet Curtain background.
Correct.
Of course, as usual, we run out of time and we have fabulous people. Thank you to Mr. Tom Panos and Andrew Morello.
Thanks very
Please
much.
remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel to support us and all SMEs wherever you are. And you'll find more great interviews on our YouTube channel if you subscribe and like and share. A huge thank you to the SME Association of Australia for making SME TV and Podcasts Super Channel possible. And if you want to reach us with any news or topics that you'd like to hear our business gurus discuss and debate, then you can email us news@smea.org.au, and we are, of course, across all the socials. That's it from us this week. We'll catch you all soon. Thank you very much.